it's a very special moment with us because the actor joining us has been in headlines recently. He made a very wonderful debut in Hansal Mehta's Faraaz, and I was left in awe of his performance. And yet again, he impresses with Vikramaditya Motwane's web series on Netflix called Black Warrant, and it's wonderful to have lead actor Zahan Kapoor with us. So Zahan, thank you so much for joining us on Filme Shilmy, and it's such a pleasure to finally have this and to do this interview with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Anuj. I'm happy we could make this happen.
Right. Now look, Black Warren, it's another real character that you're essentially playing on screen. After
Yeah.
But I think the what I found very interesting actually in both the film roles or the screen roles that you've done is that there is a sense of a rabbit in the headlight type of a theme, in both the characters where they're both characters that are completely unassuming, that I have really been kept off guard about really intense and serious situations. Um, Zahan, what do you think it is about you attracting these sort of roles where it is about you getting caught in the flashlight and trying to figure things out and, being very unassuming, I think.
I I have no idea. It's I think it's incidental because there's two things I've done in between this. There's a series for Amazon which I did before, and a short film also. Both unfortunately did not release, haven't released yet. They will do soon, I hope. Um, and they're slightly different though in world, and they're fiction pieces completely. So these are, it just so happens to be that Faraz and Black Warrant have come out, and they are suggesting that I have, kind of somehow chosen these true story inspired films, and the kind of character, let's say, the kind of characters are both new entrance in, like an entrant into a new unimaginable context, and then how the character tries to survive or figure his way out, or through the challenges that present themselves. um I don't know. I think I'm appreciate I'm grateful that I've been given these opportunities because they're very compelling characters. They're kind of unconventional in that sense, like,
Sure. Yeah.
um because it's the reluctant protagonist trope, if you can call it that, right? Uh,
Yes.
so it's interesting to be able to inhabit that, and it feels kind of unique in that sense. But it's not a manipulation of it. It's just kind of happened.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I think I'd love to know a bit more about the emotional and mental process because, I mean, look, Faraz was intense, and it was obviously quite an emotional film.
Yeah.
Uh, but I think when it comes to a series like this, I think this is on another level. When we're dealing with prison, when we're dealing with really brutal themes that has been depicted in the series, it must have at least taken a toll on you because, see, not only are you having to act or live that life of the cop, but you're also then having to mentally make yourself a bit stronger in terms of preparing for what you're about to see. I mean, we've got, you know, we got like dealing with mass murderers here. We're dealing with the most heinous of crimes. And plus, to actually then allow yourself to also imagine that actor as that criminal. I mean, it's a very complex process. So what simplified that process for you? Besides the director, besides the obvious stuff, what else helped you to really dissect that process?
I mean, honestly, it really, for me, it's so much of it is what you were kind of putting aside, though. So much of it is the script. So much of it is your ability to immerse yourself in the world when you're on set. Um, the difference, though, of course, on this one, I think, was that I did a certain amount of preparation for to try and inhabit uh, the flavor of the character, if you will. I mean, in terms of the dialect, in terms of I was kind of trying to find the body language, but a lot of it comes from the way I like to do it is it's imagination. It's me reading it again and again. It's me listening to lots and lots of interviews and journal and reading like articles. You know, there's so much journalism around about the time, about other people, even contemporary journalism around Tihar. So I'm trying to fill my subconscious with a lot of this information, a lot of this world, a lot of the kind of characters who inhabit these worlds. And then it's really playing the game, and then it's being able to jump in and imagine what it would be like in the first person. Like I'm not trying to separate myself from it and look at it like an outside observer. I'm trying to find myself um, within the context of the script of the scene. And so what is the character dealing with? He's dealing with challenges. He's dealing with people. Can he trust? Can he not trust? He can do things. He can't do things. So it becomes a leap of faith
Hmm.
after you do the preparation. And so it's not like I'm not trying to brace myself for intense emotion. I'm not trying to fill it. um I mean, there's a little bit of research you can do to and kind of imagine the background, but beyond that, it's everything should feel like it's happening for the first time, right?
Yeah, correct. Hmm.
That's the joy of doing any kind of work. And even if I'm doing it for stage work, right, you're trying to discover it afresh.
Hmm.
So to feel confident, I like knowing the script. I like knowing what are the possibilities I have at hand.
Hmm.
And then I want to try and feel like I can let it go and play moment to moment. And it is heavy stuff. So I don't have to try. I just have to kind of, I don't know, like react to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. I mean, acting is reacting essentially anyway, right? So that is the fundamental basis of the craft. But I think you were talking about your first reaction and stuff like that in your response, and it makes me very curious because I feel, when you're doing a role like this, and I think with any character, whenever it's gray, I mean, here it's not necessarily gray, but the areas that you're navigating are very, very gray and very
Oh,
dark.
yeah.
So how does one necessarily, abandon judgment? Because it's not easy. I'm sure you must have, I mean, that because usually judgment is the first reaction we have as human beings whenever we read something,
Yeah.
what something, we react. So what would you say was your first moment, especially when you heard a bit more about the cases in particular? Like there was this Bill, was it Bilaranga case?
Taranga. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
think
yeah.
I think I understand, like, is that the framework in which we live as a society, and the the kind of certainty that we get from thinking about things, about how they should be, and how something has been wronged, or a certain right or a certain freedom has been violated. In this case, there's the, any kind of right to a sense of safety, a sense of respect, a sense of all of these things get violated, and there's pain that comes with that. So, and I understand that it can be we are quick to hold on to those certainties and to protect ourselves with kind of judging. Um, as an artist and as an actor, I think I'm allowed and I'm given the liberty to empathize with and kind of find a way to look at things with true empathy, which is understanding within the context how does it seem for the character. So even if I had to play a character that would do something that I wouldn't do, the point is to try and find a way to see what the character sees and
Hmm.
not to see the character themselves. So you're seeing through the eyes of the character as against looking and studying the character like an outside observer would, or like a psychologist would. And that's why you determine, right? You're saying this person is unhinged. Look at but I'm evaluating them. So
mm,
the challenge is to not evaluate, and the challenge is to see, that person is perceiving a threat, or that person is seeing an opportunity where they can exact a certain amount of power. So they're fearing that they are not powerful, and they're looking for an opportunity where they can find a moment in time where they can assert that sense of power, that sense of dominance, to feel assured that they are strong.
mm.
They do it outside the purview of what we deem acceptable within society, and then there's consequences.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, um, but if I can try and see it that way, I think then I can bring it to life with a certain humanity. Um,
Mm,
and that's kind of what excites me really about what I do.
mm, mm. Now, Black Warrant was not an easy watch. Um, I was honestly very disturbed for days. I had to watch like Disney films to kind of keep my mind off of things, and I mean the old Disney films where they weren't as sentimental as they are now. Um, but it was a very difficult watch, and I think it's certainly not for the faint-hearted, I think, this series. But Zahan, I do often wonder because I feel like as a society and what's happening in the world currently with the post-pandemic stuff that's happened, people are going through a lot in their life. People are mentally, emotionally struggling. There's a lot of conversation about that as well on the social space. Do you feel like such series though can also have a bit of an impact on people's mental health, especially at this time of situation and circumstances? Because I feel like should we not be watching things that are a bit more light-hearted and a bit more fun just to kind of leave our worries aside a little bit, you know?
Hmm, it's an interesting question. I understand, if I've understood correctly, the concern that you're sharing, which is that when there's when there's so much difficulty that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis in general, it seems that adding to it could be very easily overwhelming, and
Correct.
it could cause kind of overwhelm within anyone. Um, and by virtue of thinking like that, the thought arises is that, are we choosing wisely, or are we choosing art and entertainment to, let's say, reinforce the stress that we're already going through, or alleviate it?
Hmm.
And um, and it's a valid question. Um, I feel I'm confused as to whether or not there is a single answer to that. Um, Purely because I don't, I personally, I don't really prescribe to any kind of normative structure about art, especially. So, in normative being that there's a certain way things should be, and there's a certain way it shouldn't be. Should art be political? Should it not be political? Which means it's reflective of societal issues. Should art be entertaining, or should it be deeply meaningful? Should it be trivial, or should it be poignant? I mean, I these are kind of binary questions around suggesting that there's an answer in a definitive one. And I am not sure. I have a hard time thinking that that's the case.
Hmm.
Um, I personally, what I can share, for example, is that I, as a viewer, often will I much more often enjoy bigger, bombastic, fun, adventurous kind of cinema.
Hmm.
I like the sense of entertainment and the escapism of it.
Hmm.
Um, I seldom seek out the more kind of festival circuit, uh, gritty realism kind of movies. I do watch them. I do watch them. I mean, but I don't seek them out as often.
Okay.
Um, and I understand that that probably is a reflection of a lot of people. right? A lot of people are using it to say exactly like what you said, which is life's hard as it is. I mean, can we use this to take a break? Like everything doesn't have to be so heavy and difficult all the time.
Mm.
Um, so I understand that. Uh, I I don't know. You know what I think is interesting about Black Warrant, that even though it talks about some of the heavy kind of things, I do think there's been a real effort to make it entertaining. I think there's been a real effort to make it feel like there's a degree of fun, even
Yeah,
especially towards the end. You kind of it takes you through it. But I think, on my opinion, is that most really interesting art can kind of give it all to you. It can kind of really make you think, and it can kind of really make you laugh, and it can really make you feel connected to something. Maybe it can give you a deeper insight into life, and you can feel kind of empowered even in a way. Say that it's life affirming. Let's say, um, even though it can talk about, like, sometimes I find the fluffier stuff kind of is, it's like junk food, right? Like it may feel good in the moment, but then on a steady diet of it, you end up feeling really unhealthy after a long time.
mm.
So I don't know. I don't know. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm giving you a very roundabout way of saying that I don't really have a definitive answer to your question.
Oh no, no, but it's honest, and I think
Yeah.
that's what I always look for. And I think it's true. I mean, how does one necessarily kind of do that? I think it just depends, but I think it just depends on a circumstantial basis, right? Like it depends on, for example, your mind space might be more able to take, contents like this, whereas there might be others who might be a bit more sensitive, let's just say, to
Yeah.
like this. So I think it is, you are right. It is a very subjective thing, isn't it? Entertainment is.
Yeah. And like you said, is that I think it's one of the, it's the most difficult thing, I think, is how do we participate in an art form that is so one-sided,
Hmm.
right? It's not a dialogue, right? Are you ready for this? Can I ask you? Am I able to say, what would you like to listen to today? What would you like to watch today? I'm not able to do that. I kind of have to go off a hunch and
Hmm.
then present it anyway, and then hope that people might find it interesting enough to watch and spend their time and energy on it.
Hmm.
So it's tricky. It requires so much faith and kind of determination about what it is that you're telling. Like, that you have to have that kind of conviction.
Hmm.
Um, so it is tricky. It's a strange thing that we do.
Entertainment we're talking about, and you hail from two very big ancestries when it comes to
Yeah.
on your mom's side you have Ramesh Sippy sir, who is your nana, I believe.
Yes.
Um, and he is literally as commercial as it gets when it comes to the sort of mainstream Hindi cinema space. His son, however, kind of veered into a very different territory, I feel, of mainstream entertainment. And then, of course, you have the Kapoor legacy, which actually, if we think about it, and I was thinking about this very deeply when I was watching Black Warrant, is that your great, I think uncle Raj Kapoor was your great uncle,
My
right?
grand, yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
grand almost.
Yeah.
So his roles were always about society.
Mm.
He always had a sort of dialogue about society where, of course, even though you had the very catchy songs and even aesthetics for even black and white era, they still were very quite serious themes. Whenever you look back at these ancestries as well, how has that had a bit of an impact on you and the decisions you make as an artist? Because, like I said, they're commercial, they're very, very heavy commercial, but yet you've really stuck to it's almost thespian life, with Prithvi Theatre and the art sort of even projects you've chosen on screen. So how much of an impact has that had on you?
It's an interesting question. My opinion on all of them is, I think we're all, again, I think, just subjects of our own context. So we're a reflection of our own time. So when we talk about Raj Kapoor, he's reacting and reflecting on the time he was, I mean, where he's grown up, and birth of a new nation, and a lot of socialism is the dominant kind of um, point of view, and a lot of those stories are being reflected. He toured the country with with his father's theater company, so he's very well aware of a lot of the ground reality of a lot of stories of people on that strata of society as well, and kind of been privileged enough to also kind of understand what the royalty is all about in the country, and at that time, right? There's so much more of a royal influence at that time.
Hmm.
I think I think we're just all, yeah, so we're all products of our own context, right? For me, yes, I am probably just more of a product of the fact that I am very much still linked to the theater. I'm doing theater still. I studied theater. I came to London. I was part of NYT, National Youth Theatre,
Hmm.
in 2013, and it's one of the most amazing experiences of my life, actually, till date. I mean, it was me and an ensemble of 50, and I had the best 6 weeks of my life learning about stagecraft and every aspect of it. And um, I spent years in film production, learning about the craft of cinema, about pre-production, shoot, even post. Spent lots of time in post-production as well, learning how to edit, color grade, do things. So I really have enjoyed immersing myself the the process of making art, in both live performance as well as cinematic art. So, and everything that goes along to kind of sustain it and enable it, empower it.
Hmm.
So, my choices have been a result of me wanting to also collaborate with people who are passionate and dedicated, maybe in a similar way.
Hmm.
So it's process oriented.
Hmm.
It's passion to tell the story in the best way possible, and it's not trying to serve an outcome. And I believe that this philosophy can exist whether you're talking to a really commercial kind of audience. I mean, like a massy audience. If you're talking to, if your aim is, I mean, I think that dedication. Tom Cruise is probably as dedicated, and
Hmm.
he knows that he's telling a story that is going to reach people all over the world, and he loves every aspect of cinema, and I think that's amazing, and at the same time you can have somebody who's making a film, which is gonna, I mean, maybe do the festival circuits and do Sundance or something like that, and you might be as passionate, or a film, a smaller film like, um I don't know, Capernaum, which is like a Lebanese film, right? Which possibly could have the same kind of dedication to wanting to tell that story, given the means, given the context.
Hmm.
And I'm hoping that I can find people of all, I mean, or let's say find makers and collaborators across the spectrum, right? So it's not, I'm not trying to make some deliberate choice again in that sense. It just happens to be that these are the stories that have come my way so far.
Hmm.
Um, but I would love to. I would love to do big. I would love to do like a big romantic film, and but it would be tragic and beautiful, and make you really feel something, and but be elated also, and be like, wow, it takes your breath away. Um, and maybe just do something really small and intimate and kind of exploring something super niche that maybe not everyone would get.
I think your granddad actually did that very well, to be honest,
Yeah.
Shashi. Like honestly, like I remember my mom used to tell me because I think I have had so many stories where I think even my mom growing up, she's like, oh, I used to love Shashi Kapoor because of his lips, or like the sort of like roles that he would take up. I mean, he's done films which are very like I think he's done a was it Siddharth that he's done.
Siddharth, yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's also
Conrad.
done a Satya
Satyam Shivam Sundaram.
as well. I mean, if you look at the contrast, I mean, completely हाथी घोड़े का फर्क है उन दोनों में, right? And I feel like in a way you kind of are slowly, not consciously, I'm sure, embodying that same values of art because like you said you don't compartmentalize. But I think it would be really interesting just to get your perspective on this, Zahan, because you're a Kapoor of a very different sort of a league, right? You're almost like a revolutionary Kapoor for me because I feel
Wow.
if we look at I mean and after Bebo I'm saying this because I think for me Bebo and Lolo were literally, they changed the game, right? Because until then it was mostly the men in the family, and now what you're doing is you're going back to the roots of how Prithvi Raj Kapoor began his journey, essentially through
Yeah.
theatre, through the arts. Has there ever been um a sense of pressure where you felt within yourself about making sure that you kind of do mainstream stuff? And secondly, do you also feel that because Hindi cinema for the longest amount of time has worked on templates and working on things that are very familiar with the audience and copy and pasting that, do you feel like that's also been a reason why that you've not really stepped out into the mainstream territory as well?
Um, no, because I mean, I'm happy stepping into it. I have no problem. I would still apply the same filter though, which is that I want to be able to jump into the process. I want to be able to serve that idea. And I admire that there's an attempt to serve that idea to millions, you know. And I look at, like, for example, who I really look up to a lot also is like Amir Khan,
Mm,
who makes has made some really amazing cinema recently. Recently, let's say maybe the last two films haven't really worked, but before that, at least, I mean, he's empowered stories. He is championed. There's deep values, but also deep, like really entertaining, unconventional sometimes. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think that's just life. So, but the point is that can you jump in and do that? And like he does both also. Like he's empowering smaller stuff all the time as well. And I think that's really commendable, and I really admire that. And I think he's kind of a story first star, and that's kind of also what I take great inspiration from him as well.
mm,
So at this point, it's not I'm not averse. It's just that let's say the opportunity hasn't arisen yet.
mm.
So let's see. Um I'm hoping I can find an opportunity that I can try and figure out what would that be look like, and let's see. Let's see.
Literally no organic and there's no hardly any raw acting anymore. Whereas for me, when I see you, you kind of represent that. And it's not because you're from theatre or you're trying to take yourself very seriously. It's not because of that. But there's a certain process. And from my understanding of the process, it definitely seems like you're driven to the art. But how
Yeah,
difficult is it to not fall into that whole PR game and that whole game of the rat race, so to speak?
yeah. I don't know. It's happening now a bit where I'm seeing it a little bit more, and it constantly happens. I think it is difficult. I find it difficult because I deeply value trying. I deeply value being authentic, and happen to be authentically extremely passionate and geeky and very much like I'm very nerdy about all things craft and all things that go into it, and deeper things also, and human psychology and behavior and life and philosophy. And
Mm.
um, I'm not very fluffy, but sometimes fluff is what's celebrated. Um, and but at the same time, I mean, I want to have fun. I want it to be playful. I want this. You can be cheeky and naughty and do it all. Um, but like you said, I understand how manicured things become, and I understand how there's this. And you know what? I think it comes from insecurity. It comes from like if I can empathize, I get it. It's scary. You're scared. It's fear essentially that you're trying to combat. So you're trying to equip yourself with some kind of armor, some kind of protection that is And because the world is very reactive right now, right? It's so scary to say that, oh, if I say something, then somebody's going to attack me and I'm going to get trolled and it's going to be a thing and da, 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 da. And I think it is scary, and it is troubling that we're so quick to judge and admonish people, without before we really listen to them deeply. Maybe we don't agree with them. I'm not saying you have to agree with everyone. I
Hmm.
mean, you really don't. And but maybe we can try and listen a little bit more. And um, it's and maybe we're not getting taught enough. Maybe we're having to figure it all out. Maybe there's a lot of noise that is overwhelming. And we're struggling to figure it out, and it's hard. It is hard.
Yeah.
So
No, I totally hear that. And but this is a very interesting point though, because I quite often, for example, let's just say we're seeing films where on one hand you'll have an Anubhav Sinha making a movie, and then you'll have a Vivek Agnihotri making a film.
yeah,
What I have noticed is that there's so many boycott movements for respective sort of films going on, and it just makes me very sad. I mean, even recently, like Kangana's film went through a massive thing. Anubhav Sinha's series went through a big turmoil, and it just makes me very sad because I feel like everyone's so hell-bent on canceling each other out.
yeah,
I mean, wasn't art supposed to be a form of expression and it's supposed to be a very democratic medium? So, what on earth has happened to that? And I mean on both sides, by the way. It's not just
yeah.
on, yeah.
Exactly. It's both sides.
And I do wonder what's happened to that. And I think for you, Zahan, I think a real good challenge, I think, as an artist, perhaps would be for you is if your approach with a script or a story or a character, let's just say that you might not really see eye to eye with or might be ideologically very different to you. How would you, I mean, number one, would you accept that role? And number two, how would you, again, we were talking about abandoning judgment, and how again would you abandon that judgment in that sort of regard if you are approached with something you do not agree with at all?
I think it would be interesting, like you said. I think it's definitely an interesting challenge. I think the challenge itself is exciting. Um, I think my approach would be to do exactly that. Is that how can we listen deeper? How can I, as an artist, also empathize deeper with what's going on? And then, if I can truly understand, then maybe I can embody. So if someone's feeling so upset, so disturbed by something they've seen, and their response then becomes, I need to feel sure that this kind of thing won't be encouraged, this kind of thing won't be celebrated, or this kind of thing won't affect other people in this kind of way. So then to do that, I'm going to choose to take a certain step. And that step could be, for example, is for me to suggest that people boycott this piece of work. And that is the strategy that has been chosen. And again, what we're discussing now is that, do we think that that strategy is well served, or in the grand scheme of things? But what cost is it coming? Is it coming at the cost where everyone is encouraged then to do that? And then do we feel like we're just going, we're kind of getting stuck in a bit of a loop, perhaps. But yeah, what are we missing here? Maybe we're missing the idea that there's somebody who's deeply unsettled, and what is it that is what caused that unsettling? So you're very, very uncomfortable because you've observed something that clashes with something that you held to be like sacrosanct, let's say.
Hmm.
And that's important for you, that it remains sacrosanct, and a challenge is deserving. But now the whole point is that, where I think the sad part is that, can we learn to become stronger to tolerate that discomfort, as against thinking that we should not have discomfort,
Hmm.
and therefore everyone who causes discomfort is bad.
Hmm.
And that reaction feels really kind of, um
Bizarre.
yeah, it kind of feels extremist, right? I mean, you will get disturbed.
Of
But
course.
like, yeah, but let's learn how to process it. I mean, being disturbed can sometimes be the start of something incredible also,
True. Yeah.
right?
True, true, true.
So it's so thinking that it's, I think we I think this I feel concerned that we abdicate a lot of responsibility onto other people for how we experience the world. Um, and I think we should take that power because it's so disempowering to think like that, to think that it's someone else's fault of my experience. But how, what? That's so powerless. Ah,
Yeah. And also, again, sorry, I'm gonna bring it back to this conversation again about the ancestry that you come from. You, the fact that you've literally stuck to being raw and real and not even, endorsed in elitist sort of things, I think is very, very, very remarkable. And some people might even deem it as basic or whatever, but I personally really like this. I like the fact that you're doing stuff that's rooted. Um, Again, I think it would be nice to maybe delve into your life a little bit and how growing up, what life was like for you. Because A, you had these big stalwarts in your life, but yet you seem to be a very, very zameen se juda hua in that sense.
but I think that's exactly how it was. I think it was, there were no airs, there were no pretenses, there was no sense of feeling like, there was no chip on the shoulder. That was my parents and how they raised me, and to kind of be really grounded and humble and respectful, in a kind of basic way, and yet very encouraging, very experientially supportive, very culturally aware, very um the privilege to have these values, like you said, right? It's an embodiment of those values that kind of started by my great grandparents, basically, by Prithviraj Kapoor and by Jeffrey Kendall. I mean, them being, and again, I mean, on my mom's side, also um,
GP Sippy.
being GP Sippy and AJ Patel, who also, AJ Patel was my nani's father, who started the first film processing lab, uh, one of the first, I think, and the first color lab, I think,
Hmm.
film center uh, in Bombay. So was related in that sense to cinema. I was passionate about photography, and then like was importing film stock and then doing lab like processing. And GP Sippy also started off as kind of a more like a B movie producer, and
Yeah.
then my nana kind of came in and then got more kind of real mainstream commercial acclaim.
Cool.
Um, but I think the passion, and especially on my dad's side, I think the values to, because I think the theater angle, I think for both of them,
Yeah.
the value of being really kind of, there's this egalitarian value system that has trickled down, and the idea that it's, we're really just humans, all of us. So it's a lovely thing to be able to explore and have adventures and know things, and encourage that. But you kind of shouldn't get too carried away with it. You should kind of not think that you're separate from the rest. You're one of everyone, and I think that value system. So I'm grateful that that's kind of been a real anchor point.
Hmm.
And growing up, so I've had a unique, I have to say it's unique because not everyone gets to grow up in an environment like I have, which is so artistically encouraging, and there's very astute kind of sense of art and culture. Yet at the same time, was encouraged to live very normally, very simply. Have friends of my own choosing, from different walks of life. Traveled in that basic kind of way. Wasn't very fancy, wasn't very plush. Wasn't like that at all. My dad famously, for example, like he would travel business class, but me and my sister would travel economy.
Hmm.
No, I'm not paying for you traveling in business. You earn it.
Gosh, that's like such a dad thing to do, though.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, it's kind of so it's very relatable also, and and a nice mix of it, nice mix of Indian culture, nice mix of bit of British culture also. So kind of a really brutal, inter-family personal kind of frankness, and it just kind of keeps you uh keep it very straight, very not too much what do you say, like no faking it,
Yeah.
kind of being very honest, like you're upset. It's um there's no, yeah, it's just,
More upfront, yeah, a bit more
yeah,
frank.
upfront, yeah, yeah.
Um, Recently, 100 years was celebrated of Raj Kapoor, and it was so, so heartening to see the family come together. And it was very fun as well to see them all sort of celebrate and to see all of you sort of celebrating that legacy. Um, if we look back, I mean, I know you've mentioned it a lot, but just on this occasion of the 100 years, what would you say is the thing that has stayed with you over these years about his cinema?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. One is that 100-year celebration, I was late. I was I was so late
Okay.
because I was stuck at Netflix office all day doing recordings for promotional stuff for Black Warrant. And I got so late, and by the time I left, and then I went straight, it took me 2 hours, 2.5, I think, almost, to get to the screening. And and everyone, and I was so embarrassed. My
No, but it's
dad,
not your fault. Mumbai traffic is awful. Having been there recently, I was like, yeah,
yeah,
no.
yeah, it was horrible, but my dad was very cross. Um, but I really admire what Raj Kapoor did. I'm very, very jealous of how he set up his own studio at the age of 24 and made a film. And really, he was a pioneer in that sense. He he was so bad. He's again, I'm really inspired by how passionate he was. The stories I've heard, I never met him, right? So I have no idea. But I've heard the stories about how, this is what my dad keeps saying, and he loves it. He said he loved his work. He loved, and he lived really simply. He said his room in Chembur, in the house, there was nothing in it. It was so bare. He just had one gadda on the floor and one bedside little table and full of books, maybe.
Hmm,
And he would just read it all. And that was it. And it was just nothing. He just had one mattress. It was just so simple. Like he didn't care about anything else as much as he cared about his work.
hmm,
And that's why that sense, that song also, Jeena Yahan, Marna Yahan, Iske Siwa Jana Kahan, is an unbelievable philosophy to think about from the man who was, I mean, and yes, we remember him as the greatest showman, and
hmm,
then we kind of confuse that maybe it was all about the celebrity, but it was actually all about the craft. It was all about the passion, and he was invigorated by every aspect of life. So he enjoyed the bigness of life,
hmm,
or he saw life as being inherently that big. So that manifested in his work. And in the early years, of course, you see kind of the stories and how he champions the socialist kind of philosophies, and then later on it kind of becomes more deeply emotional and interpersonal,
hmm.
um, as against kind of a socialist societal reflections, right, and commentary on society. And I think he is, like I said, like I admire his dedication. I admire how he was involved, even like he was involved in music. He was involved in the sets and how he wanted to create things, and he loved poetry. He loved food. He loved things, and I think, and I don't like this term because gives it this kind of European context, but the idea of being a Renaissance man,
Yeah.
it, but I think that we can find a version of that in our own context, because there's so much, we live in such a rich, diverse culture, in this country. And I love the, the idea that I can kind of be inspired by him, and then hopefully kind of find ways to also empower things through story, express myself through story, through this craft, through and it could be on, and like I said, I'm kind of medium and genre agnostic. I could do it through theater and cinema. I could maybe find it through other fine art as well. You know, I've explored that in little ways through my life, and I like doing that. I like um yeah, being kind of tactile and physical and interdependent with other people. Like I like working and figuring things out.
Oh.
So I think he's a testimony to all of that.
Yeah, no, true. And I know you said you were working on an Amazon series, and
Yeah.
NJs just love to stop us from asking questions, but that's not going to stop me. So, tell if you can divulge a little bit about that, or on any other future projects, or any other role actually now that
The
you're looking
the
forward.
Amazon series, they announced it, so I can talk
Oh,
about
you
it.
can.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
please.
they
Sure.
announced it last year. It's not released yet. I don't know why. Hey, Amazon, please release it. Um, I finished it before Black Warrant, literally. So it's gonna feel like after Black Warrant, Zahan has done this. I said no, before Black Warrant, I did this. Um, it's called Bandwale. It's written by Swanan Kirkire and Ankur Tiwari. It was directed by Akshat Varma, who wrote Delhi Belly and directed Kala Kandi, wrote and directed Kala Kandi. It's fun, it's light, it's not as dark as both of the films I've done so far, both of the work pieces of work I've done. Um, there's another short film that I did, which is part of an anthology. Also, I did well before any of this, which is probably going to come out this year at some point. I think they've sold it now, finally. I don't know exactly, but I've been told that I think it might come out soon. So that's there. That's a film directed by Karan Kapadia, who was part of Big Girls Don't Cry. Has directed the short film. He did again the film. Actually, we shot it before Big Girls Don't Cry. But it's going to come out now. It's That's kind of an adventure story, a short film, very ambitious short film, in fact. Uh, Touches upon mental health and some darker, let's say, aspects of dealing with past trauma and things. So trigger warnings there. But interesting, an adventurous attempt to try and make something kind of poetic and philosophical, and yet relevant to things that are like struggles and trying to make it cinematic and like it's an interesting attempt. Let's see what happens. Um, Currently still doing shows of my play, Siachen. I have shows this
Yeah,
coming week.
of course.
Uh, I was in Bangalore the week before. And upcoming projects, honestly, now I'm really overwhelmed by uh, by getting a lot of recognition for Black Warrant, and it's opening up conversations for me. So I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to find stories now and uh, collaborators who can hopefully I can really jump in bed with,
Nice.
and um, and let's see. And I'm open. Like I'm really hoping I can. I'm hoping I can try and find a bit of a mix. I'm hoping I can do something fun and light, and I really would love to do like a comedy and a romance because I really want to explore that.
Yeah.
I think I would like to learn. Um, and if something kind of again just comes up and it feels like it's really interesting and compelling, and even if it's dark, I mean, I'll do it because you just gotta. It's about if the opportunity comes, right? It's like you said, like it's contextual, right? So if it comes, it comes. Let's see.
Hmm. No,
So
definitely.
that's pretty much it right now. So let's see. I'm hoping.
Sure. And do you know what my really deep desire is? Honestly, Zahan, because I was devastated when I found out RK Studios burned down. When I got that news, I was devastated because that for me was like literally bachpan. So for me to see that it was a very personal thing. I don't know what's happened, if it's just completely rubble now or if there's some things
They've
left.
no. There's nothing left. Unfortunately, they've sold it now, and they're gonna just it's no. It's
But I really think there should be like a museum or like an exhibit.
uh, you will. My dad will love you for saying this.
No,
He was. Yeah,
seriously.
yeah. He believes that too, and but unfortunately, a lot of the stuff kind of disappeared in the fire. But yeah, I understand the sentiment. fully.
Like, I mean, I'm sure because I'm sure, if we look at other, like other, I'm sure your other uncles, like Ranveer sir, if we look at, um, you know, even Rajiv sir's family and all of that, I'm sure there must be something or some memorabilia that if
There
even
is,
gives, it could
yeah,
have a,
there is stuff. I know. I mean, some of my second cousins, Arman, they're kind of doing that and try
yes,
and um, collect all of it and create this kind of memorabilia. So let's see, let's see. I hope so too. I mean, I'm a bit far removed from that in a responsibility obligation sense. I have my own to deal with, which is Prithvi, and take that forward, which I am.
it's a
So
very big responsibility though. It's not a small one actually, because Prithvi
no,
Theatre,
yeah,
literally, it's a big part of the legacy, right?
it
So
is, and I'm happy to say that I'm learning how to bear it with um, a sense of choosing as against a sense of burden,
yeah,
and it's been tough. It's really a recent thing. It's only the last 6 months or 7 months or so where I'm managing to kind of reorient myself. Also, there's a lot of angst before that. It was difficult, but I think yeah, it's nice. I think there's been some recent growth, recent personal life growth that is helping me uh, shift in perspective and realize that okay, there's ways to do this. There's ways to build on it. There's ways to keep it open and again, yeah, just do it from the heart. Find ways to be really compassionate.
नहीं बिल्कुल जो भी कुछ करना है दिल से ही करना है, and that's what makes it.
वही
So
वही
it's very true. Well, look, Zahan, thank you so much for joining me on Filme Shilmy. It's been, gosh,
Thank
it's
you.
been such a fruitful conversation because I feel that passion, number one, that I have to say, and I'm so sorry because you get asked about your family a lot in interviews, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to make it a focus on that, but I just couldn't help it.
Yeah, I get it. No, it's the first one. This is the first wave. So everyone's interested in the backstory. I'm
Yeah,
hoping by the time the next project comes around, it'll start to become more contextually relevant and more contemporary.
and it's
Because
already happening. It's already
yeah,
happening, to be honest. Like even with Black Warrant, I keep calling it Black Current for some reason.
yeah, yeah, you're not the first. It's happened 3 times or at least I think. With some people also somebody came up to me the other day. Hey, you're that guy, right? You're in Black Current. I said no.
Oh God. Yeah, no. So it was really good to see you in that. And I think the sort of growth you're having as an actor, I need to next time I'm in Mumbai, I definitely need to pop by Prithvi Theatre and
Please do.
actually watch your show. So I hope
Yeah.
that I get that opportunity. But amazing work so far, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what other future projects will bring and how you will also flourish as an artist there forward as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anuj. I'm really happy we could have this conversation. I'm really happy that it was so relaxed and nice and honest and breezy and thank you. Thank
It
you
was
so
it was so it was so lovely. Honestly, very satisfying for me as an interviewer as well. So thank you for being so open and honest and not bound by anything. And I think I love that. I think it's something that I always love and appreciate. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuj. Likewise. Hope to see
Cheers.
you soon.
Yes, Zahan, definitely.